Hi, it's Kirby Sommers. Today is October 15th, 2025, and this is a very special podcast. However, it's also triggering, and so if you are easily triggered, I would advise you to perhaps skip this one. However, this is something that I've only kept on my Substack for a number of years. Now, I'll republish it every now and again, but primarily I don't even talk about it outside of my Substack. I'm going to have to use different words. So, for example, for the word SACRIFICE, I'm going to use the word offering. And so the title of this podcast is The Cult of Baal. The person whom we really can't name, whose initials are JE. And I'm going to have to be careful with Wex. And I think you know his full name, the person who owns the Victoria's Secret. So I'm, again, going to have to be very careful about what I say and how I say it. Now, I think most of you recognize the image I have on the screen. It is from Stanley Kubrick's film, Eyes Wide Shut. And it's a specific image that I selected because typically this is the subject that I'm going to be discussing, because I think it has to be shared, and I'm going to do my best to do so. So a lot is getting lost in the ongoing JE saga with Donald Trump at the center, the meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell by Deputy Attorney Todd Blanche, and the outrage of the public. Now, once again, from my viewpoint, only the uppermost service level of this is in the news, even in indie media. What we hear from mainstream is, did JE run a blackmail operation for one or more intelligence agencies? Did Donald Trump have S with minors? And as bad as these things are, they don't include the eyes wide shut. And, there's a word, RITUALS. And for those of you who are new to my channel, please know that on this platform, we're not allowed to say certain words. We just aren't. And so if we say certain words, something could happen, like, the podcast won't play, or even now it's really heavily controlled, I'm going to say, so that I will regrettably have to use substitutions here and there. Now, if that bothers you, once again, I will encourage you to perhaps go to another channel, a mainstream channel. They're allowed to say anything they want. Someone like myself, I am not allowed to say anything I want. So, in the film, let's say Eyes Wide Shut, the women and children are unalived while surrounded by men, primarily wearing masks and hooded robes, and they're involved in elite orgies. And so I'm kind of like concerned here if I'm even doing this, or if I'm really going to do this. So I'm going to proceed. I've put up an image, and I'm not going to use a lot of images, by the way. I'm only going to use 4. So this is about a multi-generational cult that believes in Baal. Baal is a god worshipped in many ancient Middle Eastern communities, especially among the Canaanites, who apparently considered him a fertility deity and one of the most important gods in the pantheon. So I was on a podcast not too long ago, and I mentioned Fred Trump as having been named by a Franklin survivor as one of his, uh, the bad people. And even Jack Nicholson, as I have mentioned on this podcast, on my platform, has been outed by someone in Franklin and someone else in Epstein. And I have shown him to be connected to other unusual things. And again, that would be on my Substack. So while people use the word client, who were these people provided to? Who are these children provided to? The actual term is Satanist. Okay, so, or more appropriately, a member of the cult of Baal. So this would include the offering of someone who is breathing. Like, sorry, I just have to use a different terminology. Now, I mean, most people who've heard about this, let's just be straight, they talk about JE's blackmail and S transportation, and even that they think is far fetched. So we've heard about prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, a well known prime minister, British royalty, tech tycoons, and bankers having, let's say, a one on skin with people that are not of age and others who are not there of their own accord. Um, and we know that this has been said to have happened on most, if not all, of JE's properties. Now, when in January of 2024, a batch of JE documents were released, this had to do with Virginia's defamation lawsuit, which caused this to be released against Ghislaine Maxwell. And included in these documents was mention of witchcraft and animal offering. Substitute the word offering for that S word. So afterwards, I received from one of the victims this image, which is a photograph that she took of a cloaked figure that JE kept on the island. Now, I really hate it when people are the island, the island, the island. It didn't just happen on the island. However, we know that it was called ORGY Island. Now, I'm going to talk about an actual situation that I have heard about from a person who was there where people were dressed like this. And of course, I can even pull up this image, which some of you may have seen, and that would show Prince Andrew attending a party, an Eyes Wide Shut themed party, by the way. Although I don't really hear a lot about that party at all. Now, I'm going to delve a little bit into Leslie Wexner's enclave of New Albany. And as we move along, you'll understand why I'm sharing the fact that he built the city. Now, you would be, and I'm going to read, you know what, I'm going to just read from my article. You'd be hard pressed to find a Victoria's Secret store in New Albany, the city Leslie Wexner built. The polyester lingerie made by child slave labor in foreign countries is not posh enough for the uber wealthy who have purchased homes in Wexner's idyllic version of America. He keeps the faux luxury stores out of the ever expanding city he created. In many ways, New Albany resembles Wexner. Not only is it constantly pushing against its boundaries and expanding, but its history is one of poverty. It reflects the story Wexner repeats like a mantra of having turned a $5,000 loan into a multi-million-dollar empire. That is what New Albany is, the product of an advertising campaign. While Wexner may have envisioned a sort of Mulberry The city really does evoke the Stepford Wives vibes throughout. In Ira Levin's book of the same name, uh, a young couple moves into what appears to be a beautiful and pristine Connecticut neighborhood. The wife soon suspects the perfectly dressed and submissive women are, in reality, robots made to look like the wives the men have unalived. And really, who would know? The robots all look exactly like their former wives, at least physically. However, they lack human organs as they have been turned into acquiescing S toys, ever ready to satisfy their husbands at their request, any time of the day. No headaches ever. The young wife in the book, which later became a film, is horrified when she discovers her suspicions to be true. Her husband has agreed to let the group unalive her. In reality, Levin's book and film, the robots replacing wives theme is a reference to the ongoing offering of women and even children. Did you just hear what I said? In reality, this is the theme referencing the ongoing offering of women and children. Now, New Albany had been home to farmers for centuries, with cornfields dotting the rich black expanse of dirt. The farmers and their land are now distant memories, and it is now referred to as the most desirable city to live within the United States. The tiny village has spread like a giant spider's leg across the horizon and into the adjoining cities. In fact, it wasn't even referred to as a city before Wexner came along. Generations of farmers were displaced when he had his epiphany. His problem were the farmers, the little people, the families who derived their living from the land. But that didn't stop him. Perhaps he has no heart, no sense of what it is like to be displaced, because, like any other developer looking to take advantage of those less fortunate, he sent rough looking people to make the farmers lowball offers on their homes. Leave or be pushed out. Wexner began to bulldoze around them until one by one they packed up their precious few belongings and moved on. Many remained homeless. Some prayed they would die before their homes were razed. Others were lucky enough to have passed away before their homes were gone. J.E. and Wex met in 1985, although both have publicly stated various years, 1986, 1987, and 1988 among this. According to everyone who knew them and the sources I interviewed, they were very close. Sort of like Epstein and Trump. Neither man, however, will ever disclose what they did with J.E. With every passing day, J.E. appears more and more like the fall guy rather than the leader of the pack they all pretend he was. Jeff helped Les build his dream city. A former broker who worked on early deals with Wexner told me. Epstein found all the ways in which Wexner could take advantage of tax loopholes. And let me just make a note here for myself every now and then as I'm looking at my old material. There's always a place that I could sort of like revamp. And to get water and sewage into the developing city, they simply took taxpayer money to get it done, another source in Columbus confided. Now, Wexner may have had a vision, but the reality is he had little to no experience turning it into a reality. So enter J.E. Before J.E. came along in 1988, the financial preparations and groundwork for the New Albany development were a total mess. But he cleaned everything up and he served Wex in other capacities. He facilitated visits to Wexner's home of the crew from Cats, organizing a Tony Randall song and dance show, which, he put on in Columbus. Now we're going to return to the theme of Baal and MK Ultra because one of my sources is a former MK Ultra asset for the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, he was just a boy, according to him, when he found himself being trained as an unaliver in a sub-program of that MK situation that we are discussing. And he knew JE and his friend Wex, and allegedly witnessed an offering on Wex's private oasis. Now, he built this all to himself. He has an enormous plot of land, enormous. Now, in the 1970s, the public became aware that the CIA had unalivement programs. Among these were Project Artichoke. And there is an article in the New York Times dated 1974, which provides information on these covert activities. Artichoke and others like it were created by CIA Director Allen Dulles in 1953. My source, who I'm not going to give you his name, but I'll refer to him as Adam, is a former unaliver for the government where I maintain a residence. Now, he was also somebody who had to perform for former presidents. So, like HW, you can fill in the first name, you can fill in the last name. During this time, he explained that he was repeatedly R-worded, uh, tortured, terrorized. Uh, I mean, and this is very similar, by the way, to what many of you have heard from different people who don't know each other in different countries. Now, his training began at the age of 13. Um, and if this trained unaliver sounds like the film Jason Bourne, starring Matt Damon, you're spot on, because the movie is based on the work of the CIA. And in reality, if you look at the name Bourne, Bourne, it means reborn, the emergence of a different personality, the alters created by the MK Ultra program. Paul Benassi, survivor of the Franklin situation, has spoken about this in his various interviews and depositions. So I am going to skip over a lot of this information. I'll leave the link to the article because I didn't read the entire article for you, nor will I. But I'm going to get to the meat of the subject, or try to. Now, when I first heard about this ritual on the property, I have to admit that even I was skeptical, and I've done and heard a lot of things. However, I did find an obscure footage of something um, very similar, that was filmed, of exactly the same situation that I am going to share with you. Now, and again, in that situation, they were all wearing these hooded robes, as in that film and as in that scene. So I thought, well, okay, now this is an actual thing. And the film I found and the what it captured, I was very intrigued, and I found this maybe 5, 6 years ago, kind of like early in the days that I began to study this group of people in depth. And I dug and I dug and I dug, and mysteriously, the person who filmed it was himself found unalived. So that, here's the thing: they don't leave behind anyone uh, who could who can pose um, harm to them, to this group that continue on with these practices. So that Adam did tell me that Wex knows him, that he was on Wex's property where there were two females who were done this to, and that there was an area where they were low. So I have to be very careful here. So I'm going to use another thing. Please follow carefully. Follow carefully. in Salem, there were the Salem witchcraft trials where the women who were thought to be witches were burned at the stake. And what I just said, this happened on a special place for the same action, listen to me very carefully, that was done to these girls as an offering. So, because I was skeptical, he provided me with some images, images uh, that show the location, that show exactly where he stayed, that show exactly where the people congregated. And then in closing, he said, the two political parties contrive a divide in order to pick our pockets and keep us down. There are politicians on both sides using slaves just like they used me. Now, the cult of Baal. So, there probably would have been another image that I could have uploaded because it talks about something called the Tophet. And a Tophet, I'll just explain it to you. Mm. So, like throughout history, there have been discoveries of large tophets, and that's spelled Tophets. So, one was found in 1922, the Tophet of Carthage, and it has thousands of cremated remains of young children found in urns. And some urns had burnt infants and small animals, usually sheep, and others had infant and child and animal remains. Now, in 1947, the Tophet, another excavation by P. Sinta in Tunisia, discovered a sixth-floor cemetery with urns containing the charred remains of children and animals, most of them sacrificed to Baal, and that is the largest known Tophet. So it was concluded that these offerings had been going on for approximately 8 centuries. That's 800 years without interruption. Okay. So that um, I'm using this because that is one of the words that he used with me. So even on Wikipedia, a Tophet is described as the location where offerings take place to the ancient god that is referred to as Moloch. Now, I will leave, as I said earlier, a link to this original article where there are more photographs and there's more information in the event you want to delve into it a little further. I hope that you understood what I was saying, even though I had to use coded language. And I want to really thank those of you who support my work, either by liking this podcast, sharing it, commenting, or being on my Patreon or buying one or more of my books. And by the way, Chasing Chandler has been revised. There's a lot of new information that has not been shared before. And again, that's on my website. Now, there's a reason why I sometimes put my books on my website only. However, I'm not going to take up space on this podcast to share that, perhaps on a separate one. However, I am looking forward to your commentary on today's podcast. That said, you guys have a good day. Bye.